Hello and welcome back to another Warhammer 40k tactics video. This is again going to be continuing with our theme of the Imperial Guard, sticking to what I know for now, and we'll also be continuing with the series on how to make Imperial Guard good again, what you need to do in 7th edition, and we're going to keep on drilling down into this whole Imperial Guard infantry are the key to winning. Because I can't keep stressing this enough. If you're fairly new to Guard, or if you're experienced to Guard and you're trying to take this to the next level, to the tournament scene, this is what you need to know about your infantry. Now, I've got the codex in front of me now, so we're going to go through the two troops choices that you have as a Guard player. So the first troop choice, and it's one that I'm going to talk about, and it's one that most Imperial Guard players will go to first, and it's going to be your veterans. So your veterans, you're essentially paying 6 points a man. You've got guards and stats across the board, so you're paying 1 point more than a normal guardsman. But you're getting an extra ballistic skill. You're getting the ability to take 3 special weapons instead of 1 special weapon in a squad. You get access to different doctrines, blah blah blah. There's a few other little bonuses here and there. So it's understandable why your first instinct is to go straight to your veterans, because they've got all this access to this better gear. They've got access to better ballistic skill for what appears to be such a discount. But there's a couple of things that basically make veterans, well, in my opinion, useless for tournament and competitive play. Number one, and this is going to sound really strange, but they're 6 points a dude. That's 1 point more than a regular guardsman. That's 3 points more. That's double the points of a conscript. That's going to start. That's, we talked about in other videos how you've got to squeeze every point as a guard player, and we're talking about every point. It's not an exaggeration. There's no point in me spending 6 points on a model that's going to die just as easily as a 5 point model, or just as easily as a 3 point model. They're wasted points. We're not here to do damage on the individual squad level. Not as a guard commander. If you want to do damage on the individual squad level, and if you want your individual squads to be really good, go and play Space Marines. You're playing Imperial Guard. You're not here to have elite commando squads. If you want to do that and still play as humans, go and get stormtroopers. You've picked up the Imperial Guard Codex. It says throughout all the fluff, the Imperial Guard are all about massive, overwhelming numbers. It's not about commando tactics. Now, that's not me dissing anyone who has a large veteran army. That's fine, good for you. I'm not dissing your army, but we're talking about competitive play here. Competitive tournament play. Now, I'm going to be getting a lot of raised eyebrows here. A lot of people are going to disagree with me, saying it's all about the veterans. It's not about the Imperial Guardsmen. But you're just wrong, and you'll see why later. But essentially, that's the first point. So you're spending an extra point per guy when they're going to die just as easily as a 5 point guy. The next reason why you don't want to take veterans is because even if you max out every single troops choice, you can only get 60. And if you've watched the other videos in this series, you'll know that 60 infantry you should be taking in 1 platoon. You shouldn't be going to, in a tournament game, you shouldn't be going to war without 150 infantry. If you're taking less than 150 infantry, just don't bother. Just don't even bother paying your money for the tournament. Just save yourself the money. You're just not going to do anything. So that's the main thing. That's the main reason I don't like taking veterans, because you can only ever take 60 of them. They're just not worth it. Okay? So now we're going to get onto the real point of this video, the main bulk of the video. We're going to go through the second troops choice, which is the Infantry Platoon. And I'm going to explain to you how I build my platoon and why it works. Okay? So if you're a guard player, you know what the infantry platoon consists of. You have to have your 1 5-man command squad, and you have to have a minimum of 2 regular infantry squads. So So again, just referencing back to the veterans' lack of numerical superiority, for one troop's choice, you get minimum 25 dudes versus a maximum of 10 dudes with the veterans. Yeah, you're paying points for that, and I understand that, but it gets to a point when it's about going over that threshold of 60 guys. It's about going up to, the 100 guys, the 200 guys. That's what you're looking for. So we're literally just going to work our way through the different options in the infantry platoon and say what I run them as. Okay. So the very first thing, platoon command squad. This is a very cheap unit. It's 30 points, and I would buy no upgrades for this. None. If the most I would spend is 1 point on a bolter for the platoon commander, so that everyone's got a 24-inch range shot. These guys, their platoon command squads, it's essentially a 5-man guardsman squad that can issue an order. Orders are absolutely great, but every point you spend on trying to protect these guys is a waste, because they're just going to get targeted and killed straight away because they're very easy for your opponent to kill. It's just a waste of time trying to protect them. At the end of the day, think about it. You're going to put 65 points into a Chimera to protect a 30-point squad. How does that work? You're spending more points on protection than the actual value of the squad itself. Even if you equip these guys with really good, like, heavy and special weapons, it's just not worth it. So keep them cheap. And surprisingly, the cheaper you keep them, the more survivable they're going to be. Because if they've got no weapon upgrades, your opponent is not going to shoot them. He's going to see 4 guys with lasguns, or 4 guys with 4 or 5 guys with low yield weapons. He's not going to target them. Yeah, maybe they're an officer squad, but this little 5-man squad, it's going to be survival because it's not going to have very many weapons, so he's not going to see the damage it's doing to him. It's going to be lost in the waves of your other infantry. And also, your company command squads are going to be issuing the real orders. These guys have only got access to a very limited range of orders. There's only 2 orders you're really going to issue with these guys, and that's move, and first rank fire, second rank fire. We all know what first rank fire, second rank fire does. Those extra lasgun shots, absolutely fantastic. Move. It's very good for getting your guys around. I'm actually going to do a separate video on guardsman mobility, because a lot of people say they haven't got much, but we'll delve into that in another video. So no more time wasted on them. 30 points, bare bones, run them around, buff your blobs with them, keep them cheap, keep them in cover. Excellent. So the next one we're going to go on to is the big one, the one that we're going to talk about quite a bit, the infantry squad. 50 points, 10 guys. You have to take 2 of them. You can take 5 of them in one platoon. They can take 1 special weapon, 1 heavy weapon. I am a massive special weapon. We'll talk about first. I am a massive fan of the grenade launcher. A lot of people don't like it, but it's 5 points for a weapon that is going to be shooting every turn because it's got decent range, 24-inch range. And it's almost like you're paying 5. If you shoot frag or crack, you've got 2 firing modes. Frag, I actually don't use frag all that much. I tend to find there's not that much horde armies out there, but the small blast's going to help. But even if you do shoot it at frag, you're essentially paying 5 points to give yourself a blast lasgun. That's not too bad. 1 lasgun shot versus the potential which you have to hit with, or 1 las blast where you could hit 2 or 3 models. It makes sense. I actually find myself shooting the crack grenade most of the time, just because if you've got 4 of these in a blob of guys, that's 4 shots. If you hit with them, you're gonna wound them. It's as simple as that. And I also can't tell you the number of times that I have chipped off the last hull point of an enemy vehicle with a grenade launcher. Individually, they're not very good, but when you're taking 12 to 16 of them in your army, they will consistently chip off that last hull point on the side armor of the Imperial Knight. Don't forget that grenade launchers do get buffed by Bring It Down. They do get buffed by Fire My Target. So when you're shooting them, we'll say Bring It Down, for example. When you're shooting them with that Imperial Knight side armor, you might need 6s. You've got to reroll on them. Don't forget that. I don't use the flamethrower simply because this is 7th edition. It's all about shooting. By the time my guys have got into range of the flamethrower, they're all dead. I tried solidly for 6 months running flamethrowers on infantry blobs, running them upfield, and I found they were just dying before they got there, because the job, if you want to run people upfield with las guns and flamethrowers and whatever, just ditch the flamethrowers and take a bunch of conscripts. Conscripts don't get shot at, they actually make it, interestingly. But we'll be moving on to conscripts later. So don't spend the points on melter guns, and really, because you're only one shot ballistic skill 3, and that's 10 points, so you might as well spend 5 points to get you one shot. And plasma guns are too expensive. We're generally, you're going for mass amounts of firepower, you're not going for high quality firepower, so keep them cheap. 5 points, grenade launch, it ups your firepower and it's great. Heavy weapons, I always take heavy weapons in my infantry squads, because it allows your infantry squads to reach out and damage your opponents as you're moving up the field. I generally try and keep it to either the autocannon, the heavy bolter, or the missile launcher at a pinch, although I will always have at least one las cannon blob in my pure infantry army. Very quickly, I don't want to get too stuck on this actually. The reason you want to put heavy weapons in these guys is you can movement and shooting is done on a model by model basis. So if you've got a 10-man squad or a 20-man, we'll say a 30-man blob, If you move the main individual models, your infantrymen, your riflemen up, and conga line back 2 or 3 guardsmen, and you don't move your heavy weapons in that blob, your heavy weapons still get to fire at full ballistic skill. Okay, so imagine you've got 3 heavy weapons at the back of your blob, you move the rest of your blob forward, you just leave a little string of guardsmen to maintain coherency, suddenly everyone's firing at full ballistic skill. Now that little trail of guardsmen as you move the field is probably going to get slightly longer and longer, but you will tend to find about turn 3 or 4 that whatever your autocannons could see has either moved away or has died, so you're alright to move them up at that point. But you'll get 3 solid turns of shooting at full ballistic skill before you then have to move them up and catch them up with the rest of the blob. Also, don't forget forwards for the Emperor, where you can do a shooting attack and then run them up behind to catch up. But that's just by using your order. So always take heavy weapons. It allows you to reach out and shoot. It doesn't restrict your ability as long as you blob up effectively. Okay. Blobbing up. Again, I'm going to keep talking about the infantry squad. Blobbing up. It's essential. If I take a 40-man platoon, I'll often have 30 of them blobbed up together and 10 on their own. The reason I have that 10 on their own is either to act as a speed bump if I've got a close combat army running at me, or to sit back and just be on the objectives and just running around capping objectives with Maelstrom. But you've got your 30 men, which is your main thing that your opponent's going to see, and then you have your 10 men, which are just hiding out in cover, just shooting off around here and there. Don't necessarily need that. You're perfectly okay to blob all 40 together. I don't always have that little individual squad. It is just nice sometimes to have that little bit of flexibility where you've got 30 and 10. Sometimes. Your mileage may vary. Next section of the platoon. Heavy weapon squad. Don't bother with them. It's 6 guardsmen, but actually it's like only having 3 wounds, because your only toughness 3. The heavy weapon squads are meant to be your anti-tank. If you shoot your anti-tank at someone's tank and you don't kill it with the heavy weapon squad, that tank's then going to turn around and blow the fuck out of you. And I guarantee that any tank worth its salt is going to be rocking strength 6 or higher weaponry. And that means instant death for your guardsmen or for your heavy weapons teams. Because it's one model with 2 wounds. You've got 2 wounds, which means you're going to instant death on toughness 6 or higher. Don't bother with them. They just die. They don't receive orders well. The only way to make them receive orders well is to put a Primera Psyker in there, and it's just so much less efficient than putting them in a blob. You're going to be taking your infantry blobs anyway. Just keep your heavy weapons in there and do as we discussed in other videos. Buff them with orders, buff them with psychic powers, keep them moving forward and conga line backwards. Okay, so don't bother with heavy weapon squads. Same for special weapon squads. Unless you really want to take them, don't really bother with them. You're taking infantry platoons anyway. Special weapon squads just aren't worth it. The 6 guardsmen. Special weapon squads, you're not going to put flamethrowers on them because they're never going to make it. You could drop them out the back of a Vendetta or a Valkyrie, but then if they scatter, they've all got to take dangerous terrain tests. Grenade launchers you're going to be taking on your regular infantry squads. Melter guns and plasma guns, again, you're fucked by your Resistance Skill 3, so just don't bother with them. Now, the second most important unit in the infantry platoon is conscripts. Conscripts are massively overlooked by so many guard players, and I'm going to keep this to 1 minute. Okay. For 3 points, you essentially get a guardsman, which is weapon skill 2 and ballistic skill 2. Everything else is the same. Now, he only has leadership 5, but you're never ever going to take a blob of conscripts without either a priest or a commissar. Strangely, I recommend the commissar. Commissar boosts the whole unit's leadership up to leadership 9. Suddenly, you're running around with at least 30 or 40 of these guys on leadership 9. They're going to be accepting first rank fire, second rank fire. I think I said this in the last video. 100 shots, 120 shots, even at ballistic skill 5. You're going to chip wounds off the riptide. You are going to bring things down. Simple as it gets. Conscripts are so fantastic. If I could take just platoons of conscripts, I would do. But I can't. If I could take only conscripts, it would actually make me want to take tanks again because I'd be saving so many points. But that's a different story. Basically, conscripts are 3-point guardsmen. They can do everything that guardsmen can do, but slightly worse, but for so much cheaper. They're almost half the price. And remember, they die there's no point in protecting your men. Your men are going to die. Don't pay for protection. If you put them in cover, cover's free. That's how you protect your guys, but don't pay for extra protection. That way, a conscript dies just as well as a guardsman. They could be speed bumps, they can be close combat bumps, they can be objective holders, they can be, my favourite tactic, I always take one blob of conscripts and I string it out across my whole deployment zone. They're a mobile 5-up cover save, mobile age defense line. I can go to ground behind my conscripts for a 4-up cover save and suddenly taking 50% less casualties. So they fulfill 3 vital roles. Mobile cover save, cheap access to bodies, and just they help you achieve that numerical superiority that's absolutely key. Okay, so we're just going to go and do a quick once over on what we've discussed in this video. Okay, so quick recap. So platoon command squads, keep them cheap. They're going to die they're going to die anyway. The best way to keep them safe is to keep them low profile. You will keep them cheap, keep them buffing your guys, keep them moving forward. Simple as that. Infantry platoons, always take a special weapon. I recommend anything that's 5 points. I prefer grenade launcher over flamethrower because it's going to be hitting your opponent every turn. But if you really have a hard on for flamethrowers, then take them. At least for flamethrowers, you don't have to roll to hit. That's one thing to bear in mind. Always take a heavy weapon. I recommend you take autocannons because they're a good solid staple. Heavy bolters if you are going to list tailor and you know you're going to be facing lots of infantry, but generally I prefer autocannons. Missile launchers if you're strapped for points and you can't quite afford las cannons. Las cannons I always take 1 40-man blob with las cannons in, but it's not essential. But you must take a heavy weapon, therefore best combo grenade launcher autocannon. Keep them moving forward, conga line your guys backwards, and always buff your infantry squads. Recommended blob size, in my opinion, 30 for flexibility, 40 for survivability. 50 is too unwieldy, 20 will die without doing anything. Okay. Also, always add a commissar so that they take their orders more effectively. Priests are good for fearless, but that stops you from going to ground, which means you can't get bonus cover save from hiding behind your conscript wall or any cover. Okay, and if you get into close combat, the zealot's not going to save you anyway. Another video will talk about which advisors to go in these platoons. Heavy weapon squads, don't bother, they die too easily. Trust me, I've tried making them work for about 4 years now. It's not going to happen. Unless they can get an immune to instant death rule, don't bother with them. Special weapons, again, if you really want a hard on for special weapon squads, actually take a squad of veterans. they'll do the job better. But obviously I don't recommend veterans because you can't get that many. I can sort of recommend, if you really want to take veterans, take a solid core of infantry and then have some veterans on top. Conscripts are amazing. 3-point guardsmen, walking shield, speed bump, tar pit, but also can put out a hell of a lot of firepower. You get, if this is the one time when I say a blob of 50 is actually all right, because a blob of 50 is going to really give your opponent a headache, and it's only going to cost you 150 points, basically the same points cost as the squad of Space Marines. All right, that's the recap. I hope you enjoyed the video. Next time we'll probably be going into either guard mobility, or we'll talk about the different advisors you can get to make your infantry do some work. All right, thank you for watching and tune in next time.